A live edition of Football 24/7 across the JAKIB Media YouTube channel with NFL Insider John McMullen. What a day it's been on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel as the Eagles clinch that playoff berth, moved to 9-7 with a win yesterday over the Washington football team, and then get into the playoffs when Green Bay handled Minnesota last night. And that's where I'll let you pick it up, Johnny Mac. That's where the process now begins as we zero in on the postseason. We still going to talk about Dallas, and we'll get to that during this special live edition of Football 24/7. But first, opening remarks from you.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite the turnaround from 2-5 to a playoff team, and not only a playoff team, one that clinches a week early. I don't know how many people saw this coming. I certainly didn't see it coming. Look, the Eagles have taken advantage. You can say all the stuff, and it's all realistic. It's all true. They've taken advantage of the soft part of the schedule. We've been talking about this for dating back to the spring when the schedule came out, Krause. It looked difficult on paper at the beginning of the season. It certainly was. And then the second half of the season looked a lot easier on paper. It turned out to be even easier than we expected. And the Eagles have nothing to apologize for. You play who's on the schedule. You play who's up there. And that's why you use the sample size of now 17 games in the NFL. And they're one of the 7 best teams on the NFC side of the bracket. And look, if there's any year you want to get into the dance and see what happens, this is the year, because you don't know who's going to test positive for COVID on a given week, who's going to be available, who isn't going to be available. So get in there, roll the dice, and see what happens. And the Eagles are in, and that's all that matters at this point.
Let's pick it up with that COVID conversation. The Eagles put a baker's dozen on COVID after testing positive today. A lot of starters on that list. Who's there, Johnny Mac, and what does it mean now that the NFL has new protocols?
Yeah, I mean, look, a lot of people, and I said it myself, this looks a little bit strange, a little bit hinky, a little bit, I called shenanigans a little bit with the Eagles putting, as you mentioned, a vast majority, a lot of key players, Fletcher Cox, Dallas Goedert, Jason Kelsey, Avonte Maddox, Rodney McLeod, Boston Scott, Alex Singleton, a lot of starters to name a few on the COVID list. Look, the NFL changed its protocols last week. In theory, all these players could be back to play against Dallas with the new protocols over the weekend, even though the game's on Saturday night now. But the Eagles are not going to want to play a lot of these players. And if they do play them, they're probably going to take that preseason type mentality. Look, you don't have 90 guys. So it's not like a preseason game. Certain guys have to play, but it might be a series or two. And we'll take Fletcher Cox, for instance. Well, you might see Milton Williams go out there and play 65 snaps in a game, and Hassan Ridgeway play the vast majority of the time against the Dallas Cowboys. The Eagles don't need the game. Dallas, by the way, interestingly says, Mike McCarthy says he's going to play his starters. They still have a chance to be the number 2 seed. A lot of things would have to happen. Probably not worth it from their standpoint to gamble with some of the players, especially after they lost Michael Gallup to a torn ACL yesterday. That's a big loss for them. So we'll see. I mean, Nick Sirianni hasn't come out and said, I'm not going to play these guys, but this gives them another crutch, so to speak. They can elevate people from the practice squad. They don't have to move around with roster changes. If somebody's on the COVID list, you can just bring somebody up as a COVID replacement. So, shenanigans. But, and I got a lot of heat for pointing. The Eagles are one of the smartest and savviest organizations in this league. And if you're asking me, yeah, I think they're playing with the rules a little bit here.
Johnny Mac, how does it work? Just a question of ignorance. How does a player get tested? Are they taking the same test that we're buying at CVS over the counter, or how does it work? Like, how do you test
They don't
positive?
get tested now. They don't. If you're vaccinated, they don't get tested. Now, this has been a fluid process throughout the season. There's been different stages. At the beginning of the season, vaccinated players would get tested once a week. Like I get tested once a week, and I continue to get tested once a week. Players, that's how it started. Unvaccinated players have to get tested every day, every single day, just like last year. As that moved on, and you saw really toward the end of the season, you saw this explosion of cases around the league. The NFL saw a problem, to be honest, and you've seen it over the past couple of weeks. You've seen whether it was New Orleans down 20 plus players, losing a game with, I forget who played Ian Book. Sorry, I forgot the Ian Book game. Or the New York Giants having to play Jake Fromm, or the Washington football team having to play Garrett Gilbert. Even last night, Minnesota the Eagles kind of knew they were going to be in the playoffs because, it's difficult to beat Green Bay at home at Lambeau Field in any circumstance. Without Kirk Cousins, who tested positive, they had no chance. So the league saw these nationally televised games being blowouts and really ugly football, and they wanted to keep as many players on the field as possible. So they shifted the protocols to the point where vaccinated players no longer have to be tested. They are not tested except in a random sort of TSA-like fashion. Occasionally, somebody get pulled in a random fashion and get tested. Unless you report symptoms. And, players are going to play. And whether it's a sprained ankle or a pulled hamstring, if they can play, they're going to try to play. If it's a stuffy nose or sore throat, somebody going to self-report those symptoms? I don't know. Maybe somebody does. Maybe somebody doesn't. But, independent doctors can notice you having a stuffy nose, notice you having a symptom, and force you to get tested. It's not a good system, Krause. It's not a good system. And that's where we are now, because the league is trying to make sure. Look, in a couple of weeks, if it's Philadelphia going down to Tampa Bay, the last thing this league wants is Philadelphia with Gardner Minshew, playing Tampa Bay with Blaine Gabbert. They don't want to see that. They want to see Jalen Hurts and Tom Brady, and that's where we are.
Football 24/7 with John McMullen. Let's talk a little bit about the playoff structure right now. The Eagles are locked in on the 7th seed right now. And just for clarity, John, there is no chance.
No, they can get the 6th seed.
Okay, so
they could still get the 6th seed. It remains unlikely, but they have a small chance to get the 6th seed. There's so many different possibilities, and basically, the Eagles could play Tampa Bay, as I mentioned. That's the most likely candidate to play in the first round of the playoffs. But they could draw the Rams, they could draw the Cardinals, they could even draw the Cowboys. So they're still, because those teams are all wrangling for positioning as well. So a lot of different shoes have to be dropped still today. And the Eagles still have a small chance to get that 6th seed. If they do get the 6th seed, the one thing that is guaranteed is their opponent, if what needs to happen happens, their opponent would be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Do the Eagles want the 6th seed?
Well, a lot of people said, who would you rather play? I mean, so, who would you rather play? I don't know. There, as I said, if you look at it, I'm counting it up and I got it right here. There are, for the Eagles, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different potential options of things shaking out over the final week. 5 of them, they would be playing Tampa Bay. So 5 of the 9. So that's the most likely scenario. From there, there are 2 possibilities that they play the LA Rams, 1 that they play Arizona, and 1 that they play Dallas. So it's more likely than not they're going to be playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But all 4 of those teams are still in the mix for potential. And we talked about it this morning on Birds 365. Jody McDonald wants no part of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Look, I get it. I never want Tom Brady on the other side, but they got a lot of injury issues. From my perspective, the last team I would want to see is the Dallas Cowboys, because I think, and I say this all the time, styles make fights. I don't think the Eagles match up well against the Dallas Cowboys. I just don't think it's a good matchup for them. I would, if you gave me my druthers, I would want the Arizona Cardinals. I don't trust the head coach, very young quarterback, very mistake prone, very explosive too. All these teams are good. All these teams would be favored against the Eagles. You're going to play a good team, and you're going to play a good quarterback, whether it's Tom Brady or Matthew Stafford or Kyler Murray or Dak Prescott. No more Jake Fromm's, no more Garrett Gilbert's, no more even Taylor Heineke's. It's going to get ramped up to back early in the season when you struggled against the Bradys, the Mahomes, the Justin Herberts, the Derek Carrs and such.
Let's talk about that, Johnny Mac, on this live edition of Football 24/7. And there was some discussion last night during the post-game show, on the live post-game show, when you jumped on from FedEx Field. The team has had this slow start that they've been able to overcome in these games against teams like Washington and the Giants. They're not going to be able to do that as easily, if at all, if they draw Tampa Bay or Dallas or any of the better teams that are in the NFC East. The competition is going up substantially once they get into the playoffs.
Yeah, and you don't want to play that way. We always talk about, you probably need your A game to beat one of these teams. But, this is the NFL, and again, Arizona will use them. One of the reasons I would rather play Arizona, this is a team that loses to Detroit they get blown out by Detroit, and then they go into Dallas and beat the Cowboys. So in a lot of ways, you can't explain this league, and you're going to need one of these teams, whomever the Eagles are playing, you're going to need them to play poorly if the Eagles are going to get through the first round of the playoffs. But it's not like that's not a potential possibility. All these teams have played poorly at times and in games, and you hope you catch them on the right day, and you hope you're bringing your A game, and then you're really in the football game, and you really have a chance to win it.
I do encourage everyone, if you're watching live here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel, to at some point go back and watch the Birds 365 Monday edition with Johnny Mac and Jody Mac. A lot of good information, good dialogue from 2 experts You'll learn a lot by watching Birds 365. Johnny Mac, I want to get some direct perspective from you on Jalen Hurts. And, the reason I asked the question, Xander and I, in terms of our conversation yesterday while that game was playing out down in Washington, he seems to be different. He seems to be, there seems to be more zip on the ball. He seems to be, I don't know, more defined. I'm lost for the word that I'm looking for, but I guess the lead in is to you is, what do you see from Jalen? He looks different to me. Now, is he? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, different from week one. Yeah. I mean, he has slowly and incrementally improved as a young first-time starting quarterback. I don't think that should be a surprise to anybody. I mean, I don't know. There was this weird kind of sentiment that he couldn't improve. I don't get that. On the other hand, it kind of comes from where your starting point is. Look, he's still a work in progress. He's still a very young player. And I always use the term unique when I'm describing Jalen Hurts, because he's a very unique player. He's not, if you want to drop back a classic drop back passer, Jalen Hurts is not that. He's a playmaker. He finds a way to make plays. And you saw it on the big, I think it was 27-yard reception to Greg Ward. Didn't even hear the play call. Now, Shane Steichen said today he defaulted to what the play call was because ultimately he knew the game plan and knew the situation they were in. It was a 3rd and long, and he knew what to go to. So, one, that's a positive if it's true. But two, it was just the play broke down, sandlot football, scramble drill. He's able to get the football to Greg Ward for a big gain down the field. That's what Jalen Hurts does for you with the off-schedule offense. In other words, making something out of nothing. The original play breaks down. He's able to do something. Now, you can't count on that. You can't build an offense on that. You can't just tell Jalen Hurts to go out there and make a play. That kind of stuff is going to get bogged down. But when you need it in a big situation, it's nice to have that ability. And that's what the Eagles have. And they've embraced it. Nick Sirianni has embraced it and said, this is part of what makes Jalen Hurts effective. Other coaches perhaps would try to, take that out of Jalen Hurts' game. And I think that would be a very, very big mistake. One of the things I love about Jalen's game is he's relentless. And look, I'm going to throw a name out there. And by no means am I comparing Jalen Hurts to this particular player. But I remember covering Brett Favre, and I got that same sentiment. Now, that's a Hall of Fame player. Again, I'm not comparing. But the thing about Brett Favre is had no conscience, didn't care. Maybe threw an interception. Did not care, was going to go right back out on the field, and he was going to continue to press the issue and continue to put pressure on the opposing defense. And I was talking to another writer, and, he said to me and verbalized it like this: man, Jalen Hurts plays 60 minutes, and a lot of defenses don't want to play 60 minutes. They don't want to play 60 minutes. And by that, I mean, they're going to be out there on the field. But if they're stopping you and stopping you and stopping you, usually when you get the best example of this is probably the Giants game, which they lost at MetLife Stadium. That was a terrible game by the Eagles. Terrible, terrible offensive game. Probably the worst of Jalen Hurts' year. And he was still there in the final seconds and had a chance to win the game twice when you had the Jalen Reagor drops. He was still pushing. Usually, when you shut down a quarterback like that from a defensive perspective, they're mentally shot by the fourth quarter. You got them beat, not Jalen Hurts. He's got this ability to keep going and going and going, and defenses don't want to play for 60 minutes. And if you have a quarterback that can keep your team, no matter how bad it's been in the past, and keep going and going and going, it's like the tortoise and the hare. Maybe you're the tortoise. Slow and steady wins the race a lot of times.
Johnny Mac, how dangerous is this football team once they get in, once the postseason begins? Are they a team that Tampa Bay does not want to play? Or are they feared by potential opponents because of that offensive line, because of that running game? What's the counter from the opposition?
No, I don't think anybody fears the Eagles. But these are good teams. I mean, you don't play to the level. You're Tom Brady. You don't fear the Philadelphia Eagles. Yeah, they beat him in the Super Bowl 52. He's also got a bunch of rings. He doesn't fear anybody. He expects to go out there and win, but so do the Eagles. So I do players not want to play certain teams? No, that's probably more of a fan base thing. I think there's tremendous respect for individual players, maybe too much respect. You saw the Jets cornerback who managed to intercept Tom Brady yesterday go up. I don't know if you saw the video. Go up after the game, get him to autograph the football.
Yeah, I did see that.
That's a little bit too much respect.
Right.
I hear people talk about Aaron Donald and reverence. The Eagles might play the Los Angeles Rams. That's the best defensive player in football. That's been the best defensive player in football for half a decade now. He's one of the greatest defensive tackles that ever lived. He's unbelievable. I don't want to hear that from my team though. So I see it with individual players. I don't see it with teams. If you're in the NFL, I think fear is a wrong word to use. I don't think teams fear other teams. I think if you're playing Aaron Rodgers, you're up against it. But I don't think fear is the right adjective.
Football 24/7 with NFL insider John McMullen across the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. We're live with this edition of Football 24/7, leading you right in to another premiere coming up here right at 7:30 on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. The channel buzzing with lots of conversation today as the Eagles clinch a playoff berth, which is an amazing thing in so many different ways. When you look at a 2-5 start, by the way, the team ahead of the Philadelphia Eagles, the San Francisco 49ers, that was the one game in that 2-5 start. That was the one game, Johnny Mac, that I actually thought the Eagles should have won that football game. When they played San Francisco, I think it was.
Yeah, I thought they outplayed San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you. That was obviously early in the season, and that was one. In fact, when I was talking about that 2-5 start, I said they probably should have beaten San Francisco, probably should have lost to Carolina. They did not play well in Carolina. They managed to come back and win the game in the second half. Sort of what I was talking about with Jalen Hurts. He had a bad game, but kept coming and coming. And they got a big defensive play, big special teams play, and they managed to steal that game. I thought San Francisco was the exact opposite. I thought they outplayed them. Too many mistakes. That was early in the. Remember the big play to Quez Watkins, 90-something yards. They couldn't punch it in the end zone. They tried to go with that faux Philly special play on fourth down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I think they outplayed them. But sometimes that happens. Sometimes the best team doesn't win on a particular game day because you make too many mistakes. And hey, that could be the Eagles in the first round. Maybe they're not the better team, but maybe you find a way to steal a football game.
Let's spend the last few minutes that we have on this live edition of Football 24/7, John, talking about from the defensive side of the football. The Jonathan Gannon critics are still out there, but the defense is playing what? Better? Is playing well? Is improved? How would you define the play of the defense under their defensive coordinator? And what do you have to say today?
Not much in the fact that, Jonathan has kind of settled down, I think, a little bit and isn't giving us as much maybe as he did early in the season from a perspective of, I asked him, for instance, what changed first half to second half, and he kind of repeated what the players said. Josh Sweat specifically said yesterday, nothing. They just executed better. And I think to a certain extent, a lot of that is true because, Taylor Heineke doesn't throw the football down the field a lot, isn't going to press you a lot. And a lot of underneath stuff in the first half. The Eagles weren't tackling well. There were yards after catch, and they kind of shut that down in the second half. But I do say, the Eagles are top 10 in so many defensive categories, top 10 in the NFL in just about every meaningful defensive category. Now, you can rightfully point out, as Paul Domowitch did on his Eagles report column that you can read every Friday, where he breaks down everything by the numbers, you can point out that, look, this team has been very good against bad quarterbacks defensively and pretty bad against good quarterbacks defensively. Overall, though, and that's what we do in this league because you play now 17 games, it used to be 16. You're not playing Tom Brady every week. You're not playing Patrick Mahomes every week. If you did, guess what? Everybody would have a pretty bad defense, Krause. Everybody. Now, if everybody got to play Jake Fromm every week, everybody would have a top 5 defense. Not picking on Jake Fromm. He's just not ready to play right now in the NFL. So you can't apologize for who's on your schedule. And I think if any Eagle fan, if I told you at the beginning of the season, the Eagles would be top 5 in about 7 or 8 defensive categories, you'd take that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them aren't taking that well. I don't know why. Well, I do know why. They want aggression. They want blitzing. And it's ironic because the last thing you want to do is blitz a Tom Brady or an Aaron Rodgers or a Patrick Mahomes. So, I don't know. Be careful what you wish for.
60 seconds remaining in this live edition of Football 24/7. We're leading you into the Dan Sileo premiere from the National Football Show coming up right here at the end of this report. Who do you want to play, Johnny Mac? Where do you want to go? You travel with the team every week. Where do you want to go?
Well, I want to go to Tampa. I mean, look, there's no bad destination. Los Angeles, Arizona, Dallas, Tampa. There's no bad destination, especially as I look out my window and there's 5 inches of snow. However, Tampa's the closest. So there you have your answer. That's a true reporter answer. I'm not a fan, Krause. So that's it for me. That's what it comes down to.
Good stuff from John McMullen tonight on Football 24/7, a live edition of Football 24/7 across the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. Right back tomorrow morning, Birds 365. Who's on the agenda tomorrow, Johnny Mac?
I just mentioned we got Damo at 8:20, so everybody tune in for that. And we'll obviously talk about the playoffs. We can also get in the Hall of Fame talk. I know Damo's obviously the Philadelphia voter, and Eric Allen did not make the semifinal cut, so a little disappointing from that perspective. So we'll talk to Damo about that.
All right, good stuff. That's going to do it for this live edition of Football 24/7 with NFL insider John McMullen. Stay right here and enjoy Dan Sileo from the National Football Show. Thanks, Johnny Mac.
Like, share, subscribe.